Today we're going to discuss many subjects. The relationship between the heavenly celestial angels and the earth, the subject of the root of anti-Jewish or anti-Semite. We're going to read how everything turned around, especially the story of the Megillah. We're going to digress during the study in order to understand the Megillah, and we're going to study also the story of biblical Joseph and his brothers. We're going to learn the idea of saying the 10 sons of Aman in one breath, the reason for that. And if times allow, we're going to study the chart of the Torah and the scrolls, why in the Song of the Sea and other locations we have a space in between the letters versus a regular reading of the Torah. So where we are on the very bottom of page 15b, Vayu Nikra'im, and they are read before the king, Melamed Shenikra'im Me'alehem. So it means that they are read for themselves. Vayimatze Katuv Katav Mibayalei Melamed. Page 16, ששמשי מוחק וגבריאל כותב. So Shimshai was the king's scribe, and Rashi said, סופר המלך, שונא ישראל היה, ומימות כורש היה, כמו שנאמר בספר עזרא. So he was a well-known anti-Jewish. He was 18 years in his job, and Maharsha said that he was descendants of Haman. Yet the angel Gabriel came and was writing it again into the book. So the idea of written, that it's a record that it was again recently written. Amar Rabbi Asi, דרש רבי שלה איש כפר תימרתא. He said, כתב שלמטה שלזכותן של ישראל אינו נמחק, כתב שלמעלה לא כל שכן. So here he tried to compare the writing in the world below the world above. So he said, if something written down below the world that is for the benefit of the Jewish people, it cannot be erased. So how much something that it was written above in heaven, lo na'asa imo davar. So they ask, Achashverosh asked his servant, what did they do to Mordechai? And they said, nothing has been done for him. So, אמר רבה, לא מפני שאוהבין את מרדכי, אלא מפני ששונאים את המן. So, first of all, the question is, why is לא נעשה עמו? And the text doesn't say, לא נעשה עם מרדכי דבר. So, כי מדי דברי בו זכור אזכרנו, נאום השם. So here, the famous story from Meir Shapira, the one that was the inventor, in a way, of the Daf Yomi. He said that usually the Jewish people are persecuted, so they get used to anti-Jewish and anti-Semite. They're always here. All of a sudden, they said nothing has been done to him. So he said, do not think for a second that the story is because they love the Jews, they love Mordechai. It's not the story, it's because they hate Haman. It's like someone said, when you read at the end of the Megillah those songs, Chad Gadya, the story of the goat, and you see how the cat was after the dog was after the cat, not to hit the goat, right? So the rabbi said, why we need to read it, right? At the end of Pesach. And they said it's because the cat is after the dog is after the cat, not because the dog love or care for the goat. It's because the dog hates the cat, right? Mm-hmm. So if you see a nation fighting against somebody who's doing harm to us, It's not because they love us, it's because they hate that one. Heichin lo, he had prepared to him. Tana lo echin. So it means that Haman prepared the gallows and he actually prepared it for himself. So the Vilna Gaon said that in heaven they turn around, that it will that everything will be the other way around. So this mahapach, this huge change, it's come from the Bereshit. We read in the story at the very beginning, Hamin ha'etz. Hamin ha'etz, that's the soul of the Aman. So the Balei Musar tells us that the first man, Adam, he has everything. God gave Adam, remember the beginning of Genesis, the whole garden. The only thing he asked him, one little tree, leave it alone, don't touch. Right? And then Adam cannot restrain himself, and he ate from that tree of knowledge. And he was thrown out of the Garden of Eden. If you think about Haman, he reached a point that he had everything, whatever he wish he had. And he's an elderly person, about 120 years old, Mordechai. He is sitting there and is not bowed down to him. So now Haman is ready and willing to get rid of everything, right? Just because one person. So the idea is sometimes seeking honor, seeking to, to have this king horse and the king's garments and all of that. Sometimes this one small things can destroy the whole person's life. Va'asechem leMordechai, amru leimanu Mordechai. So the rabbi asked, they said, Amar lei, that Haman asked Achashverosh, who is Mordechai? He's like, he pretend that he doesn't know who is he, right? Mm-hmm. And Achashverosh tell him, now go and do that to Mordechai. What do you wish to have? It's like Amen. He says, I wish to have, he has everything, right? So the only dream here is to wear the garments that the king have and to ride the horse, the limousine that the king has, that he wants to, right? Mm-hmm. So he said to him, go and do that to Mordechai. So now Haman pretend he doesn't know who is he. He said, who is he? Amar le Yehudi. He said, it's the Jew. Amar le Tuva Mordechai ka b'Yudai. You go among the Jews. There are many Mordechai. Amar le Yoshev b'Sha'ar HaMelech. He says, this is the one who sits at the king's gate. Amar le Sagale b'chad diskarta inami b'chad nahara. So when Haman realized that he made an error, so he said to Achashverosh, how about these Jews doesn't know about honor to go by the king horse, to go around the city. He realized that he's going to pay a price. So he said, how about if we give him a nice palace with a beautiful river around it and all the beautiful area, etc. Amar le haname havele al tapel davar mikol asher divarta. Originally speaking, you, Haman, wanted to have the horse, the garments, and everything. Now you suggested that we should give him a house with a riverfront. Do all of that, including what you said. That's the Marsha explained. Vayikach Haman et halvush v'et hasus. So now Haman had no choice. So he took the garments and the horse. So now he's after Mordechai, right? He wanted to take him to go around the city with the king's horse, which most probably in those days was very rare. They use only for a special occasion, right? Mm-hmm. So he's going to search for Mordechai now. Goes around, where's Mordechai? He's in yeshiva, in Beit HaMidrash. He's now teaching Torah. So he walk in. So now you see him teaching the sages the law of Kmitza. What is the law of Kmitza? So Rashi explained to us that, you remember we said that it was a 3 days of fast. They fast for 3 days. And that was the time that we recall in our history, that the fast took place during the festival of Pesach, and it was 3 days. So you have 16 of Nisan. At the middle of that fast, the dealing will Hilchot Menachot, how they do Kmitza in Beit HaMikdash. Kmitza is the way that the Kohanim took in their hands, and they do the certain rituals with their finger. So that was the subject they discussed. It relates to the festival of Pesach, and Haman is sitting on the back of the Beit HaMidrash, and he watched Mordechai teaching the rabbis those halachot. Kevan dechazre Mordechai, all of a sudden Mordechai was teaching there, and he realized that Haman is on the back of the room. The apik lekivre v'susem echad b'idei mirtat. He noticed Haman walking the Beit HaMidrash with the horse of the king. He tightened the horse on the back of Beit HaMidrash, and he realized the man, the enemy, is sitting there with the horse. He figured out, Hamar lo l'Rabbanon, he said to the rabbis, Hai reshia lemiktal nafshi ka'ati. This evil man is here to get rid of me. Zilu mikamei di lo tikavu begachalto. Run away from this place, because he's going to harm, and you may be harmed as well. So that moment Mordechai started making his last prayer of life, because he figured out he's going to be killed. That's what he figured out, because remember, he's the only one who didn't bow down to him, etc., etc. So now Mordechai is praying, right? Last prayer of his life. And Haman came and said before him, he have no choice. He was waiting there until Mordechai finished davening, finished praying. So meanwhile, it was some that had the guts to stay there. So Haman asked them, what are you doing? What do you study? In the time of the temple, one who pledged the mincha offering and brought a fistful of fine flour and will gain atonement toward here. So Amar leim melei de kumtze kimchu didchu v'dache 10,000 kisva didi. Haman said to them, you fistful of flour has come and pushed aside my 10,000 silver talents that I was willing to pay Achashverosh to get rid of her. So the rabbis explained to us that this is the offering that mesamelet Hashem bateva, that show the God within the nature. Why? Because this is the offering that dealing with the animal food, ma'achal be'ema, and it's show the whole idea of tnufa, all the God involving within the nature. So here Tosfot said, שמעתי ש10 כיכר אלפי כסף עולים חצי שקל לכל אחד מישראל, שהיו 600,000 כשיצאו ממצרים, אמר אחשוורוש כל בינם ודוק ותשכח. And the Bach explained that the 10,000 shekel, how much is it? Half a shekel. If you look at Yemei Shnotenu, the way that the King David said, so it's 70 years, and you start at the age of 20, so you have 25 shkalim times, it's a 600,000 shekel. So if you time it together, it's 15 million shekel. So that's equal to 10,000 kikar kesef. So Haman gave a tremendous amount of money. So Haman now realized when he was up there, he was out of touch. He was spacing out in his world. When he get beaten down, all of a sudden he lost his pride. Everything looks different. Omar לרשע, עבד שקנה נכסים עבד למי ונכסים למי. So the truth is, if you read carefully the story of Haman and Mordechai, originally we explained yesterday that Haman was a servant of Mordechai. So they advise Haman, how you'll be able to get rid of the Jews by giving a charity. In other words, this 10,000 shekel, kikar kesef, God, we said every day, Zoreh tzedakot, so you should distribute the money to tzedakah. So Mordechai said to him, guess what, you are my servant, so therefore when you're giving that, it's not you, it's me. Because when you distribute that money, it's actually mine. Amar le kom levosh hanemane urchov ar susya. Haman said to Mordechai, go up and ride the horse, the Bailach Malka. So the king wished to do so. So the question is, would the Mordechai need this nonsense? To go on this horse and wearing these garments? You know, by us, it's not impressive. There are people who get impressed, right? With Lamborghini, with a limousine, with servants, with all kind of things. Mordechai doesn't care for that. But Haman now push him. He says, go, wear this garment, and go and ride a horse. Amar lei, so Mordechai said to him, Lo yachelna adaina lebane ve'eshkol lemazia. He says, guess what? I'm fasting for 3 days. Is the odor come of my body? I'm not, you know, I'm just finishing 3 days of fast. He said, it's not proper for me to wear this garment of the king while I'm, you know, I have this odor and I 3 days not eat, right? It's not proper. So Shadra Esther v'asirti lekule bendane lekule umane. So meanwhile, the Queen Esther, she put an order, and all those bathhouse attendants and the barbers, they all have a free day off. So the Vilna Gaon explains that how she knows. We explain that she knows the Shemot HaKodesh, she knows all this secret formula of name of God. You remember we talked the other day? So therefore it was a, if you want to use the word, telepathy or communication between her and Mordechai. That's the Vilna Gaon said. So since no one can bath him, Mordechai said, I can't go and wear this garment in my condition. So he went to the bathhouse and Haman was forced to clean his body. Right? Ve'azil ve'atyei zuza mibeite. So Haman what? And you have no choice, and it's not zuza, it's a mistake, it's zuga. He brought a scissor from his house. So the Maharatz Chayut asked, wait a second, now it's Chol HaMoed Pesach, right? It's the intermediary day of Pesach. You're not supposed to take a haircut. So he explains that he has din Yotze Mibet HaAsurim. If this one left the prison, it's different. There's opinion that all the barbers at that time was Jews. Anyway, V'kashakil bei mazyeh, and now Haman not only need to bath him, he needs to cut his hair, right? Behade de kashakil in lag v'intach. So while Haman does that, he start grounding. Amar le amayka mitnechat. Mordechai asked him, why you were grown? אמר לי, גברא דאבחשיב למלכת מכולי רב רבוני אשתלישה ובלנה וספר? A guy like me that has the great honor to be the minister, you know, the big name, right, the big honorary person, now I need to be a barber to cut your hair? אמר לי רשע, he said to him, villain, ולאו ספר של כפר קצום היית? תנס אמן ספר של כפר קצום היה 22 שנה. He said, what are you talking about? I remember you. Before you get all this office, you're a barber. And I give you the name of village that you serve as a barber. So why you have all this pride in your brain? So right? So it's like, you see the commercial, the social media. I'm saying it as a joke, remember. So they said, we take you small and you make you big. Right? So that's the difference between Haman and Mordechai. Haman was get big and they make him small. And Mordechai, who is not looking to be big, turned to be big. Batar deshaklinu lemazye, lavishu lemane. So after Haman finished cuts Mordechai's hair, now he dressed him with a royal garment. Now is the horse ready. Amar le sakulcha. So he said to Mordechai, go up on a horse and ride a horse. Amar lo yachina. Likchi shachelai mimei ta'anita. He says, I'm very weak. After 3 days of fast, I'm too weak. I cannot go up on a horse. So Haman have no choice. Gachin vesalik. He bent down, and Mordechai stepped on Haman's back, and then went and ascended the horse. Kisalik ba'ad be'i. While Mordechai went on the horse, guess what he did? He kicked him. Amar lelo ktivu lechu b'nfol oivecha al tismach. He said, it's written in the Book of Proverbs, chapter 24, you should not rejoice when your enemy fall. Why are you doing that? אמר לענמי בישראל, אבל בדידחו כתיב, ואתה במודה מות תדרוך. So it means, David just came on time. We talked about Mordechai, who went on the Haman's back and kicked him while he went on that. So Haman asking him, why are you doing that? He said that you not rejoice when the enemy falls. So he said, guess what? That's applied to idolaters. But by us, it's written, and you shall treat upon the high places. So the Bet Yosef bring a midrash that said that we do not say Alel Shalom, we don't say the full Hallel on Pesach. Why? So we explain that bin foloi b'cha tismach, that you should not rejoice when the enemy drown. So here, how come here you see it? So Rav Sorotsky explained, when you see an idolater fall, it's which we call ba'avod reshaim rina. So we have to differentiate between individual and public and many. He said, when you have a idolater, he basically tried to reduce the value of Hashem and heaven. So he said, brilliant I heard, he said that when you have a situation that someone is maybe stepped down, but then he can rise up. But here, ba'avod reshaim rina, when you have wicked people and they expunge, this is the time of celebration, because you know that the evil was uprooted. ויקרא לפניו ככה יעשה לאיש אשר המלך חפץ בעיקרו. And he said, he proclaimed before him, this is what's going to happen to a man that the high king delights to honor. That's from Esther chapter 6. So כי הווה נקי דבזה בשביל הדבי המן. So he goes around the house of the Haman's home. Chazite brate dekame aigra. So Haman's daughter was standing on the top of the roof. Savra hai derachiv avua. V'hai the mazge kame Mordechai. She thought that the one who ride the horse is her father, and the one who lead the horse is Mordechai. Ushdite shakla tzitzav deveit akise ushdite areisha deavua. So she took the toilet, the chamber part, she have it, and what did she do? She threw it upon her father's hands. So the question is, why is that? Why it happens? Why she throw that from the roof? So the Etz Yosef said, if I didn't see it by the Midrash, I couldn't believe it, but the Etz Yosef explains that she was proposed originally because she was beautiful and have a lot of good trait. She was the one of the serious proposal to Achashverosh originally, and it was a heavily decision to make her in a certain diarrhea and certain diseases, so she need to use the bathroom all the time. So she have a portable bathroom. Right? And therefore, between a bad odor from her mouth and the need for the bathroom, she didn't realize that it's her dad, and she took that portable bathroom and threw it on her father's head. Dale Einei, Haman raised his eyes, and all of a sudden, she raised her eyes, and v'chazad de'avuahu, now she realized that she threw it on her father's head. Nafla me'igra le'ara u'meta. She jumped, she committed suicide, she fell at the roof, ground, and died. So again, the rabbi is asked a question, why she made a mistake, but why she need to commit suicide? So the rabbis explain that she was descendants of Esau. And they said about Esau that he was very makpid, he was strict to have kibudav. You see it many times. So she could not take it that she did it. Esther, however, never had parents. As you know, she lost both parents in a very early child. Before she was born, the father died, and after delivery, her mother died. So that's the huge difference between the two. והיינו דכתיב, וישוב מרדכי על שער המלך. That Mordechai returned to the king gate. אומר רב ששת, ששב לשקו ותעניתו, that he returned to his sackcloth and fasting because of the gzera, of the tremendous fear of what's going to happen. והמן נדחף על ביתו אבל וחפוי ראש. And Haman hastened to his house mourning and having his head covered. So why is that? Avel al bito v'chafui rosh al she'ira, mourning of the death of his daughter and having his head covered due to what happened to him, as his head was full of filth. Right? ויספר המן לזרש אשתו ולכל אוהביו. So Haman told his wife Zeresh and all his friends, so wait a second. Early time you call them Ohavav, and now you call them V'karlu Ohavav V'karlu Chachamav, and now you call it instead Chachamav, the wise man. Why change? אמר רבי יוחנן כל אומר דברת חוכמה אפילו במות עולם נקרא חכם. So in other words, when he's begedula, when he is uphill, he's one of the 10 most successful people in Forbes magazine, so everyone wants to be his friend. Right? But then when he is losing, so all of a sudden those who stay, those friends, you already call them chachamav, the wise men. Now they have advice how he can get his business back, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a different attitude to a person. If Mordechai is a Jewish descendants, you guys know that. So what is the point? But if he's come from those specific tribes, Yehuda, Benjamin, Ephraim, and Moshe, you cannot prevail over him. Why? Yehuda, they said that Yaakov blessed him in Genesis 49, your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. So they said that before Ephraim and Benjamin and Menashe, stir up your might. That's in Psalm 80. Kina fall tipol lefanav. They said, but you shall fall before him. So דרש רבי יהודה בר אילוי, שתי נפילות על העולם. Why it's written twice? אמרו לו, ומה זו משלה לעפר ומשלה לכוכבים? כשהם יורדים על עפר, עולים על הכוכבים. It says, this nation is compared to stars in heaven, which means when they descend like a dust. But when they rise to the star, which means always to the extreme. So Mordechai is on the rise and will be utterly incapable of prevailing over him. So all these king chambers, they arrive and made haste. So Rashi explains that he did not have a time to clean himself from all this dirt field that his daughter created for him, and he entered while he was dirty. He had to rush to see the king. For you have been sold. Esther said that my people to be destroyed for the adversary. and he's not concerned with the king damage. אמרה לו צר זה אינו שווה בנזק של מלך. This Haman doesn't care, he's not concerned with the damage done to a king. Why? Ikane bebavashti vekatla. Hashta ikane bedidi umebaile miktele. The beginning he was jealous of Vashti, your first wife. So he was the guy who advised you to get rid of her, right? So he doesn't care what happened, he gets rid of certain people he feels that they are on his way. So he advised you to get rid of the first wife, and that's what happened. Now he killed everybody. He have a decree against the Jewish people. You know why? Because he knew that I'm Jewish, and he wants to get rid of me, so he put a decree against all the Jews, because he knew that's going to happen, is I'm going to be killed, and that's his goal. All the time he tried to create problems here. So therefore, ויאמר המלך אחשוורוש ויאמר לאסתר המלכה, so King Achashverosh said to her, ויאמר למה לי? Why you need to say twice? So אמר רבי אבאו בתחילה לידי תורגמן, כיוון דאמר להם בית שאול קעתינא, ומיד ויאמר לאסתר המלכה. So in private, בחדרי חדרים, you can talk to her directly, but as an honorary king, in those days, you cannot talk to his wife if she is just a regular lay person with the same manners. So they use a translator, someone who translates the conversation. Then she told him the truth, that she is descendants of King Saul. So now she is from the royal family and he is from a royal family. So right away, he's talking directly to her at the same level, right? Show you a little personal story. You know that I came from Ben Achar Ben. I'm descendants of the Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhensk. So my brother married the Slonim Rebbe's daughter. I have two uncles that they are Hasidic rabbis. So it rarely happened that I go sometimes to the big Hasidic rabbis. So I like to go in the back and no one needs to know me. But when they start asking for my name, all of a sudden someone out there realized that these guys, you know, I connected to all these big Hasidic rabbis, all cousins and relatives and uncles. So they always push me right away to see the Rebbe. All of a sudden, they change. In other words, as much as I try to hide myself, right, it happens to my kids too. All of a sudden, they put that first. And it happened several times. I went to big names. I don't want to use names. And they asked me to bless them. I said, I'm not capable. It's not in my jargon. But it's a kind of attitude that some have. So here, the Havdil, right? You see, when you have the story of Esther and the story of the moment she described that she is descendants of King Saul, all of a sudden they treat her differently. ותאמר אסתר איש צר ואויב המן הרע הזה. אמר רבי אלעזר מלמד שהייתה מחווה כלפי אחשוורוש. Right? So, ובא מלאך וסתר ידה כלפי המן. That's one of those inscrutable texts, hard to understand. So the Hasidic sect of Slonim explain, I just told you, my brother married, now my brother is a Rosh Yeshiva, and he married the Rebbe's daughter. So anyway, in the Slonim they say that she have koach ha'emet, which means Esther have such a level of truth, that she basically puts her hand on Achashverosh, right? And they said here that the angel came and turned her hand toward Haman, because originally she said an adversary, an enemy, and then it's written the wicked Haman. So the Vilna Gaon said that at that moment she had such a level of dveikut, such a level of cleaving to God, that she wants to say to Achashverosh, you know what? You are guilty of all of that, because you are the one who is responsible for all this decree against the Jews. Haman was the cause, was the reason, but the hands will go by the thinking. But then angel came and, steer her hand toward Haman. והמלך קם בחמתו, והמלך שב מגינת הביתן. So you see twice the word המלך. The king returned from the palace garden. Makish, we compare, we juxtapose shiva lekima. Makima bechima, shiva bechama. So usually when a person gets angry, it turns, sometimes he come down. Here, both was angry. דאזל והשכח למלאכי השכח לדמו לגברי. So he walked out to the garden, and he noticed, he see the angels there, the ministering angels, and he did not realize that they're angels, and he noticed that they are actually not the buste, that they're uprooting the trees of the garden. ואומר לו, מה יעבודייכו? He said to them, what are you doing? Why are you destroying my garden? אמרו לי, דפקדינן המן. They said to him, Haman asked us to do that. Ata lebeite, so he's all mad. He come back to his house, והמן נופל על המיטה, and Haman was falling on the couch upon which Esther was. So they said, נופל, נפל מבעלי. She said he had fallen. אמר רבי אלעזר מלמד שבא מלאך והפילו עליה. It said the angel that pushed him back down on Esther. So then the king came in, אמר ואי מביתה ואי מברה. Yes.
Does I know usually they go by the first names. Do they have like Esther and Mordecai? The last names, are they mentioned anywhere?
No.
No.
Remember the last name you talk about 17th, 18th century in Poland. It was
so
before that. But anyway, here you see that Haman is assaulting my queen and inside and destroying my garden outside. So he was all angry in both. ויאמר המלך גם לכבוש את המלכה עמי בבית? You said it's not enough what you're doing outside, it's also you try to assault my queen. So the rabbi said that this is an agam mishamayim, this is a heavenly involvement, because the truth is Haman did not do it, they push him, right? So Chaim Kanievsky Shlita, he said that the sages tells us that he prepared etz gavoa, a high tree, 50 amma, 50 cubits, right? And he said ya'asu. So he said at night before, the day before, Haman created a huge tree. Nobody had these high trees. What happened? So he explains that Haman, without permission, he went to the garden and he picked up the tree from the king garden, and he did it in a hidden way, betzina, no one knows. But in heaven, they turn around and tell Achashverosh what he did behind his back. So that's a famous Mishnah in Ovid that is said in Pirkei Ovid. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka tells us that if someone does something in a hidden ways, in heaven they turn around and make it public. They sent a private detective and he tells everybody what's going on, right? So the Vilna Gaon derived from that, and he said, when you see a person that they all of a sudden they blaming from thing, bonjour. And so they in heaven they blaming for all kind of things. Est-ce que vous comprenez l'anglais?
Pas du tout.
Je comprends un peu le français. So anyway, the person they blame him for all kind of things. So it is a measure for measure. It's he is basically against the Jewish people. So a person should know that if all of a sudden they're blaming you for things that you never did before, so you figure out why they're doing that to me. So the Vilna Gaon said that if you did something to others before, it's a payback from heaven. That's it said, it derived from that. So Vayomer Charvona. So Charvona said, Rabbi Elazar af Charvona Rasha. באותה עצה היה, חרבונה was also wicked, and this was part of them. כיוון שראה שלא נתקיימה עצתו, מיד ברח. When he saw that his counsel was not fulfilled, then he immediately fled. He switched side, switched party. והיינו דכתיב, וישלך עליו ולא יחמול, מידו ברוח יברח. They said in the book of Job, chapter 27, that God punished those evil people without pity. So the Maggid of Duvna said a marshal, said an allegory, He said it was a blind person. It was a young man that helped him around. So the blind person go and he collect charity. So everyone was rachmanus on him and give him money. But unfortunately, this little boy that escorted him noted that people give him more than anyone else, and he was also have the desire to have some money. So he was constantly stealing from him the money. So all of a sudden, the blind person realized that he had very little left, and he felt that someone's stealing. So he started crying. So he was crying. So the little boy felt bad. So he said, "Oh, I found the wallet. I found the money." So the blind person looked at him and he gave him a big slap on his face. And he said, "Well, what do you think I am? You think I'm so stupid? I'm a moron? I don't understand what's going on?" So he said, "Here is the Charvona." Charvona was a wicked. Why? He was running away because he's afraid that they discover him. So that's the idea of Zachur Lachtov. Vegam. And also, Gam ha'etz asher achim. The whole idea is Hagam is Letova. It's another interpretation that said that Charvona it's Eliyahu Hanavi. They said, they derived from that story. There's a famous story about the Ostrovtsa Rebbe. He said that we know the Midrash that when Yosef had the chance to be involved with the wife of Potiphar, he saw the face of his father. So what does that mean? He saw the face of his father. So they said that the zchut of Yaakov, he reached that, that's also the Rabbi Akiva Iger wrote, the famous story of Alexander the Great and the Shimon HaTzadik. The same, he saw him in a vision. B'chamat HaMelech shachacha, and the king anger abated. Why it's twice? Shtei shchivot alalu lama. Why is it two abatements? Achat malko shel olam ve'achat shel Achashverosh. So here again we speak about connection between heaven and earth. So he said that one apply that the Maharsha said that God it's against Israel for bowing down to the image made by Nebuchadnezzar, as we learned earlier. So that's the anger of God. But then the anger of Achashverosh, anger against Haman. So be'amrela achat shel Esther ve'achat shel Vashti. So it's like gladness in a heavenly world. לכולם נתן לאיש חליפות שמלות ולמי נתן 5 חליפות. So now we go a little bit with digressing, but it's indirect connected here. We speak about Yosef and Joseph, the biblical Joseph. He gave gifts to his brothers. So we don't understand what's the reason that he gave more to Binyamin than other brothers. They said it's like the foreshadows of Mordechai's success here. So the text said Joseph gave to each of his brother change of clothing, but the Benjamin he gave 5 changes of clothing. So if אפשר דבר שנסתער בו צדיק, Yosef suffered so much in his life of jealousy of his brothers, and now all of a sudden when things turn around, he's giving Benjamin 5 times than the others. How come? 16b, Yikashel bo. So you mean to say that he himself should stumble over? So they said, Amarab Rav Chama bar Guria Amarav, בשביל משקל 2 סלעים מילת שהוסיף יעקב ליוסף משאר אחיו, נתגלגל הדבר וירדו למצרים. So on the surface it looks like just a little favoritism that the father showed to one son, to Joseph, so that all the crises happen and the descent to Egypt. For sure the rabbis go at length. If you remember the prophecy God gave to Abraham that that's going to happen, etc., etc. But the question is, if you zoom here, why he suffered because of that? What Yosef has to do with that? אמר רבי בנימין בר יפת, רמז רמז לו שעתיד בן לצאת ממנו. Joseph, when he gave a special gift to Benjamin, he hinted toward him and he said, when he gave him 5 changes of clothing, that it will be in the future a descendants that come out of him, שיצא מלפני המלך ב5 לבושי מלכות, שנאמר מרדכי יצא בלבוש מלכות חלד. So you see here Joseph, in his level of prophecy, told him that descendant of you, meaning my brother Benjamin, descendant of you will be someone that goes before the king like Mordechai with a special beautiful garment. So the Netziv in the Meromei Sadeh, the Netziv for Lojin, he said that if you look carefully at the details and all the commentators, all the brothers received the same thing. So let's say if you talk about suits or jackets, right? So they all get those, what is the name of those fancy companies that they're selling a fancy jackets, whatever they name, so they get those fancy jackets. Benjamin get a simple one. Let's talk number. So every one of the brothers, they receive a jacket that's worth $500. And Benjamin received 5 jackets that each of them worth 100. So it means if you calculate the values of what Benjamin received, is the same as the other brothers. He did not show favoritism. Yet, when he gave Benjamin the cheapest one, the cheapest suit, multiple 5, he wants to imply something. What did he wants to imply? So the Vilna Gaon explained it, and also Ma'aris Chayut explained it, that if you look at the word Chalifot in Binyamin, in Benjamin, it's written Chaser, it's like missing letter. And here it's written Maleh, in the full. So he said that's the meaning of an exchange of 5. So it's based on the Gemara in Tractate Gittin, Memdalet 44a. The Gemara said there that when you're giving money, it's like in a quiet way. It's not, when you're giving clothing, everyone see it. So the Maharsha and Rabbeinu Bechaye also explain that this was the way that they count between the brothers. Because if you look at the story, they sold the brother for a 30, in the number of 30. So what happened is, it's a 300. So how come? Because if someone sell a Eved Ivri, a Hebrew servant, so they said you need to pay 10 times. So 10 times, it means if you sell Eved Ivri to a non-Jew. So here Joseph reached Egypt, and there are 300. So basically he was mevater, he allowed to give up with all the brothers, and Benjamin is not the one who relate to that, he's different. So therefore he doesn't want him to feel like he has lost something, so therefore he gave him. So in a sense you see here a idea of receiving 1 for 5. I heard a story about Mordechai Yaffe. He is a great scholar in Israel. Yaffe, Mary Schlesinger. Anyway, he was the first cousin of the late Vizhnitzer Rebbe. So the story goes that he was in extreme, like we said, Yosef, his extreme, beautiful external and eternal, but also external appearance. So the story goes that one time it was Matronita, it was a lady that she closed the door on him, etc., etc., and he jumped to the sewer line and survived. So then he commit himself a special commitment, and he said that I'm going to write dedicate myself to Torah, and I write a book. And it's if you look at one of the well-known 5 books on the tour, which actually 5 times 2, it's 10 books that he wrote. It's because he was Amad Ben Isayon like Yosef, he was able to withstand the temptation. Vayipol al tzavarei Binyamin achiv. Then he fell upon his brother's Benjamin's neck. So they use the word tzavarei, it's a plural, as necks. Kama tzavarin havulei leBinyamin. So the Maharsha explained that here you have a difference between tzavar, the neck, and tzavarav. Amar Rabbi Lazar, bachal shnei mikdashim. He has a level of prophecy. He prognosticated that it's going to be a destruction of 2 temples. So he cried, Joseph wept over the 2 temples. שעתידין להיות בחלקו של בנימין ועתידין לחרב. Here already we explained that Joseph was a prophet. So he saw that from his brothers, Benjamin's tribe, in his territory, it's going to be a destruction of 2 temples. So the Maharsha explained that Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, they used the language of tzavar, because they said in a Song of Songs, Kemigdal David tzavarech, uBinyamin bachal tzavarav. And also the brother Benjamin wept upon his neck. Why is that? Bacha al Mishkan Shiloh. As we know, before the completion of the building of the temple, it was a tabernacle. So one was the temporary tabernacle of Shiloh that was destined to be in a tribal territory of שעתיד להיות בחלקו של יוסף ועתיד לחרב, that is destined to be in the tribal territory of Yosef and was destined to be destroyed. So that's the reason we cry. והנה עיניכם רואות ועיני אחי בנימין. So they said, behold, Genesis 45, your eyes see, and the eyes of our brother Benjamin. אמר רבי אלעזר, אמר להם, כשם שאין בליבי על בנימין אחי, שלא היה במכירתי, כך אין בליבי עליכם, כפי המדבר אליכם כן ליבי. So he said, the same way as Benjamin, my brother wasn't part of that clandestine plan of selling me to originally what? To the Ishmaelites, and then the Midianites, and then the Egyptians, and all of that. All this Benjamin has nothing to do because he wasn't part of this. So the same way, I do not carry any bad feeling, any hard anger against you, because you see that my mouth is speaking to you. So the way that the Rambam explains in the famous Ilchot Deot, he said a person should not have 2 sides of his mouth. In other words, a person should say and what he meant, what he said, and not say one thing and meant another thing. And that's the character of Joseph, Ish ha'emet. The man was true. Whatever my mouth said, that's what my heart holds. ולאביו שלח כזאת 10 חמורים נוסעים מטוב מצרים. And to his father he sent the 10 he-donkeys laden with the top possible, the fine food of the good things of Egypt. So the question is, why they use the word mem? My mituv Mitzrayim. What are the good things of Egypt that mentioned but not specified here? אמר רבי בנימין בר יפת, אמר רבי אלעזר, שלח לו יין ישן שדד זקנים נוחה הימנו. So he sent him an old wine because the aged one which elderly find pleasing. So there's 2 explanations. One said that some of the elderly people, they get old, they get all kind of Alzheimer and all kind of diseases. So the wine is something that encourages them, because the oldest the wine gets is better. That's one school of thought. It reminds me the teaching of the Confucianism. They believe in China that the oldest the person, the more wisdom he has. So that's in a way application to the idea that the oldest, it's it's a story about the Ger Rebbe, the Beit Israel, Rabbi Israel Alto, may rest in peace. I have the privilege to know him as a little kid. So the story goes that when the Rebbe has a big tish, a time that in gathering all the Hasidim, so they used to give, some of them used to give a very fine wine because he was the one with the knowledge, understanding. And while he enjoyed the wine, he gave the Hasidim the leftover, it's called Shiraim, and they believe in a special blessing of that. So one Hasid, he saved wine for a long time, for many years. And one time they have this big tish, and he gave the Rebbe, the Beit Yisrael, a big gift, that wine to use. And usually the Rebbe drink a little bit and give Dvar Torah, and the Rebbe didn't do anything. He just drank it a little bit and kept quiet. Nothing happened. So then that Hasid approached the Rebbe and he said, what is this? So the Rebbe said, well, when the little boy, he meant to say the wine, says that when the little boy was young, he was a bad boy. Anyway, so this is one way to understand it, but there is other interpretation that said, and the Maharsha tells us that the wine warms people, and elderly people enjoy wine because it, in a way, warms them. וילכו גם אחיו ויפלו לפניו. So his brothers also went and they flung themselves before him. The brothers of Yosef. אמר רבי בנימין בר יפת, אמר רבי אלעזר, היינו דאמרי אינשי תעלה בעדני סגיד לי. The fox, in his time, a certain time, is like a day a year or a certain time a year that all the other animals bow to him. It means, in a way of euphemism, the idea is now Joseph is the viceroy king of Egypt, he is the man that everything goes by him. So, therefore, even his father, Jacob, bowed to him. So, the Gemara said, Ta'ala, you meant to say that you compare the biblical righteous Joseph to a fox? So what do you mean by saying you're using fox? It's like he's less than his brothers. Mai betzirutei me'achaveim. What is, in which manner he's inferior to, compared to his brothers? Ela itmar achi itmar vayishtachu Yisrael al rosh hamita. They say that Israel, Jacob, was bowed down toward the head of the bed, which is the place that Joseph. Amar Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefed, Amar Rabbi Lazar, te'ala be'idnei sagid lei. So usually the father not to do that to his son, but here, since Joseph is the viceroy king, he gave a certain trait to everyone else that you should give a respect, especially it's before his passing, and figure out he's going to pass, how is the relationship between the brothers going to be. So he showed him the respect, the way that the viceroy king deserved. Vaynachem otam vaydaber alivam. So Joseph, after the father passing, he was have a sense that the brothers are still scared of him. They're afraid that he's going to pay them back or take vengeance since the father is no longer around. So Joseph comforted them and spoke upon their heart. He convinced them. אמר רבי בנימין בר יפת, אמר רבי אלעזר, מלמד שאמר להם דברים שמתקבלים על הלב. He said to them certain words that accept upon their hearts, that they not, he said, זומה 10 נרות שלא יכלו לכבות נר אחד, נר אחד יכול לכבות 10 נרות. He said, if 10 light could not put out 1 light, as all of you were unable to do me harm, how can 1 light put out 10 lights? So the whole idea of batel berov, that if you have a light, you lit it, so it's increased light. So the truth is, he said, by doing so, you connected to me, you caused me to raise high, because you did something that with the intent of harm, but something very good happened to them, to do me. So hatachat elokim anochi. So this is who am I? I'm God. So the truth is, if you look at the Siftei Chachamim over there, Vayishtachu Yisrael is his own explanation. What does that mean? Vayishtachu Yisrael. But the Arizal wrote in Kitvei Ari, they said that in the Gilgulim, in the transmigration of Saul, he was one of the story of the 10 martyrs. And again, this is Kabbalah. I'm just giving you what the Ari said. It's not me. It's the 16th century Kitvei Ari. So he said You know, my late grandfather, Rabbi Brandwein, he distributed a lot of writings in Arizal, and my great uncle, Rabbi Ashlag, wrote a lot. So that's the writings. Again, I'm not taking responsibility, it's just referring to you. So they said that we have in the literature of Musaf, of the additional service of Yom Kippur, the 10 martyrs. And according to that school of thought of Arizal, is the transmigration of the souls of the 10 brothers. They sold the brother Joseph to the enemies, etc. So the souls of the 10 brothers need to transmigrate again, and they came back by these 10 great sages, rabbis, that they die as 10 martyrs in the horrible death as repairing for the mistakes that happened in the previous life. But again, I'm not taking responsibility, I'm just referring to you what the Ari said. ליהודים הייתה אורה ושמחה וששון ויקר. The Jewish people had light and gladness and joy and honor. Omar Rav Yehuda, Ora zot Torah. Rav Yehuda said the light, meaning the Torah, and the rabbi said that's the oral Torah, Torah שבעל פה, too. It's not just written, both. וכן הוא אומר כי נר מצווה ותורה אור. That's Proverbs chapter 6. That's the act of allegory for the Torah as light. It's like a euphemism. שמחה זה יום טוב, וקראת לשבת עונג. יום טוב is the שמחה, gladness referred to holidays. וכן הוא אומר ושמחת בחגיך, especially מצווה, to be glad and happy during the festival. ששון זו מילה. Joy refers to ברית מילה, to circumcision. וכן הוא אומר שש אנוכי על אמרתך. I'm glad, I'm rejoice over your word. ויאמר ולא וידבר. ועיקר אלו תפילין. And honor is the תפילין. וכן הוא אומר וראו כל עמי הארץ כי שם השם נקרא עליך ויראו ממך. They said in the book of Dvarim chapter 28 that all the other nations who see that God is upon your head, you have the tefillin, ויראו ממך, and they have act of reverence toward you. So Rabbi Eliezer אומר, אלו תפילין שבראש, that apply to the head tefillin. So the rabbis explain that Haman intended to abrogate that mitzvah, those mitzvot. And then he was fallen, so those mitzvot return forever. So you see in the book, Hakol Adon Hakol, it's I think that translated also, I think Shabsi have it also in English, but anyway, in that book, there is a story about the great rabbi, the Radvaz. They said that she said in a story that he came here to the United States years, I'm talking about years back, and he started talking with people about building a yeshiva in America. And the people asked him, what are you talking about? We hardly pray that the children will stay in the proper Jewish life, and hopefully so he told them, Ki ner mitzvah v'torah or. When you have a candle, you have a wind. The wind can blow the candles. So you have a candle, you have the winds here with all the, especially you see nowadays with the internet and everything, they can easily, the wind blow the candle. He said, in order to have substantial future with our future generation, you have to have ner mitzvah v'torah or. You have to have not only candles, you have to have the light of the Torah, which is the building yeshiva. And one of the people heard him, and it get to his heart, and as a result he built the yeshiva, and it's called the first yeshiva in the United States. It's called Yeshivat Yaakov Yosef. That's what I heard. ואת פרשנדתה עשרת בני המן. So now he speaks about the 10 sons of Haman. So if you look at the words, אמר רב עדה דמין יפו, עשרת בני המן ועשרת, עשרת צריך לממרנו בנשימה אחת. So I explain in my book, Rashi said here רת שמותן ותיבה סמוכה אחריהם, כלומר עשרתם נפלו כאחד. So it means, or כאחד, that's the way the Bach said. The idea is, you have the Megillah reading, and you have the reading of the 10 sons. So the reading of the 10 sons, according to what we understand, it was one gallows, and they hang all the 10s together. So the truth is, what happened? Tosfot said, נראה דהיינו לכתחילה, אבל בדיעבד יצא. Because what happened here, you hear the Megillah, you hear it from the reader. So it's lechatchila, it's preferable that the reader will do it in one time, one breath, all the names. But if not, b'diavad, after the fact, if he couldn't do it, so he fulfilled his obligation. You see in Taf Reish Tzadik Seif Tedvav, in the code Orach Chaim 690, the Mechaber and the Ramah said that you have to add also 500 ish, the 3 words before that. So they said that each one of the sons of Haman had the Sarei Chamishim, the in charge of the 50, but the Mishnah Berurah bring from the Chaye Adam, he said that you should not say it lo la'agid beyachid, you should not say it individually, but the reader should say it. So we have the minhag to do it individually. But anyways, a well-known saying from the Rogochover. Rogochover was one of the brilliant rabbis ever in our past generation. So he said, in entire Megillah, you depend upon the reader. In other words, you hear the Megillah. But here, you not depend upon the reader. That he motzi, that he, basically by hearing him, you fulfill the obligation. In other words, he can exempt you from the reading. But by him doing it in one breath, this is something that you have to do it. You have to do it. It's shomea keoneh. So therefore, you have to go that way. But the idea is that they all die in one time, which means it's a miracle here that even they are hanged one after the other, but they are all die at the same moment, and therefore they say it in one breath. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Maitama kula baded nafku nishmatayu. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, vav de vaizata, tzarich lemimtecha bezkifa kemordei al delivrot. So the letter vav, if vaizata, if you look, you see it large. It's written longer. Why you need to have long? He said he used again some type of simile. He said like a pole, when you're using a pole, so they used to navigate boats away from rocks. In other words, you take it out, those sailors, and they want to check that they don't hit sirton, they don't hit area like the famous Italian boat that hits stone. So they put out this pole so the boatmen see where it's on the riverly broad. That's an example. So they said, Maitama, kuluhu bechad zikifa is dakfu, because all of them hang on one pole. So one after the other. So the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher, followed that, and he bring 2 different shitot, 2 different avenue with zekifa. He said, moteach bekriyata. One avenue it's vaizata, which means you do the vav, you do it in a long way. And the Rosh said the second avenue is biktivata, that you write, you have the aleph bet letters, and you stretch it. And Rabbeinu Nisim Deran had, and he said, I never heard that in any place in the Torah you have vav gdola. So he explained that the vav have a little something, little dot on the top. So halacha speaking, we have the vaizata, the vav with a long one. You see it in Taf Reish Tzadik Dalet Seif Aleph. The Mechaber said it. Anyway, Amar Rabbi Chanina Bar Papa. Now you see some indirect practical halachot. Darash Rabbi Sheila Ish Kvar Temarta. כל השירות כולם נכתבו אריח על גבי לבנה ולבנה על גבי אריח. He said all the songs in the Torah was written in the form of half brick and a whole brick. So if you look at the Sefer Torah, you'll see Az Yeshir Moshe, the Song of the Sea. You see is a line, and you see another line, and you see a space in between the line. I wish to have some example here, but if you look at the Sefer Torah, you can see it. So Ariach, it's like the way that it's written, and Leveina, it means a double. Double, which means you have one word, two space of two words, and then you have another one. So you stop in between with the space of two words. That's the way you do it, excluding chutz meshira zu umalchei Knan, excluding from this one, the 10 sons, and also the list of the king of Canaan, the 31 kings of Canaan who were defeated by Yoshua. It's the book of Yoshua, Joshua chapter 12. That over there you do differently. Sha'ariach al gabe ariach ulvena al gabe levena. That you write it in a half brick above a half brick, and the whole brick above a whole brick. So the idea is you have like 3 letters and the space and the 3 letters. Why are you doing that? So Rashi said to us, the idea is, "Mai tama shelo tehe tkuma lemapalatan, shelo yeh lahem makom le'archiv tza'adav tachtav." So Rashi said that you put a space, because when they fall, those enemies, we don't want them to come back in any form. We want them to fall and to expunge, to obliterate them, in other words, not to have in existence. The Maharsha said that in Ha'azinu we have this phase of Nikmat Dam Avadav HaShafuch. Vayomer HaMelech leEsther HaMalka. The king Achashverosh was angry, and he said to Esther, the queen, Beshushan HaRabira Argu HaYudim. So it means, he said, oh, why so many people die? Why 500 was killed in Shushan? Amar Rabbi Abahu melamed sheba malach v'ustaro al piv. That he said, he's teaching us that the angel came and gave him a stuck on his mouth. He slapped on his face. And then it changed. So Rashi said, שהרי התחיל לדבר בלשון כעס, וסופו אמר מה שאלתך. In other words, he started with a great anger, and then he said, okay, sweetheart, what do you need? So how come that happened? So the Maharsha explains that originally speaking, he was, that's his character, hafachpach, he changed his mind all the times. Originally speaking, he was angry. Why they killed the 500? And then when he get this slapped, so that put him in the right spot. And then he said, "Ma shelatech od v'te'as," what else you need that I can do for you? Ubevo'a lifnei hamelech, amar im hasefer. When Esther appeared before the king, he said with a letter that the wicked scheme that Haman had devised against the Jewish people should recoil on his own head. So Rashi said, "Im hasefer שתהא מגילה כתובה לפניהם בשעת קריאה." So now, in order to annul this bad decree, so Rashi now derive us in something that is a halacha. He said, when you read the Megillah, they have the reader, but you have the book that everyone opened, the Megillah's book or scroll in the front of them. So the source, the truth is not yet. We're going to study it on page 18. But the whole idea of we're not reading the Mishnah tells us we're not reading the Megillah by heart. You see here the source. Amar Amra mi Bayalek. Why he said Amar? Amra, because she said, since it was Esther that appeared before Achashverosh. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amra lo ye'amer bapeh ma shekatuv basefer. The Megillah should be recited what it's written in the scroll. In the letter, which will also be ordered verbally, because this is a very important lesson in an unfortunate situation our people with anti-Semite and anti-Jewish sentiments. Esther had a serious fear. She was a wise queen. She figured out if Mordechai and I write it and sent the letter out, people, anti-Semite, anti-Jewish said, this is something that there's no authority. But if you are the king who stands here with all the witnesses of ministers, and you listen and you approve it, and it's all here, so then it's a total approval and no one doubted in the future. So that's the whole idea that we derive also when you read the Megillah, you fulfill the obligation by having the book as well. So now they said, Divrei Shalom ve'emet, word of peace and truth. אמר רבי תנחום ואמר לה אמר רבי יאסי, מלמד שצריכה סרטוט, which means כאמיתה של תורה, that you have to put lines on the scroll before writing on a parchment. That's the way, like actual Torah scroll. The source of that is Gemara in Tractate Gittin, page 6a. The Gemara there have a big elaboration. It is a machloket Rashi v'Tosfot. It is disputation between Rashi and Tosfot over there. When exactly you need to have this type of attached line, those lines in the Torah. The key is, and for sure the way I'm explaining it is based on Rabbi Akiva Iger, that he explains that there is a concept which is called Halacha leMoshe Sinai, tradition that we receive from Moses. Here, there is a concept called Zekeli ve'anveu, that you have to make something beautiful. In order to write the Torah scroll beautifully, the scribe need to have sirtut, some lines which make it much easy and beautiful to write. So the question is, when it's come to write a Torah scroll, you need to have those sirtut, those lines in advance, or it's enough to have one at the top, one at the bottom, and you have two on both sides. So according to Rabbeinu Tam, you do not have to do it by the Sefer Torah, only by mezuzah scroll. When it's come to Megillah scroll, so either you go by the way that Rashi said, which is Rashi hold that in the Sefer Torah you need to do it, so consequently for sure in the Megillah you have to do it, or you go by Rabbeinu Tam that you write the Megillah the same as mezuzah, so you need to have it. But in the bottom line is the idea, it's also Tosfot in Tractate Menachot that said that he asked a question, since it's not Halacha leMoshe Sinai, is only Zekeli ve'anveu, so you only compare it to mezuzot. So to wrap it up, again, to fully understand, there is one school of thought that you have to do it in every Torah scroll, and therefore that's the Rashi, so you have to do the same with the Megillah. Or is another school of thought, the Rabbeinu Tam, that you have to do it only in a mezuzah scroll, but for the Megillah understanding, we have to do it as well, the same as mezuzah scroll. So either way, you have to do it ka'amita shel Torah, like the actual, the proper way of writing the Sefer Torah. Ma'amar Esther kiyam, Esther's word validated these regulations for Purim. So they said, Ma'amar Esther ein divrei atzomot lo? What do you mean? You're talking just about Esther, that you confirm this matter of Purim, and how about all the others, all the word of the having those fast days? Not, but didn't the fast also contribute to the miracles? Amar Rabbi Yochanan, divrei atzomot u'ma'amar Esther kiyam et yemei HaPurim ha'ele. So it means that ze veze gorem biyachad. They are both of them. The decree of Esther confirm these matters together with the others, which means the matter of the fast and the cry, the decree of Esther and the matter of Purim, they all confirm and shall be read as one. Ki Mordechai Yehudi. Now it's a very unbelievable text. Ki Mordechai Yehudi mishneh lamelech Achashverosh. Now Mordechai, the Jewish person, he is the viceroy king of Achashverosh. Vegadol haYehudim veratzui lerov echad. And he's great among the Jewish people, but he is accepted upon whom? Most of his brethren, not all. Lerov echad velo kol echad. How come only most and not everyone like him? The man saved the Jewish people. So how come not everyone likes him? Who said it? I think it was Franklin that said you can please some of the people some of the time, but you cannot please all the people all the times. So anyway, they said here, Melamed shepershu mimeno miktzat Sanhedrin. some of the great rabbinical court, Sanhedrin, parted from him. Rashi said, "Lefi shebatal midivrei Torah v'nichnas lisrara." That's frightening. So in other words, he's no longer totally occupy himself with learning of Torah, he's involved more with administration. So some people felt that this is not the same yeshiva boy or scholar that we know in the past. Amar Rav Yosef, you derive from that, Rav Yosef said, Gadol Talmud Torah yoter matzalat nefashot. The study of Torah is greater than saving life, and do not take it wrongly. Soon we explain it. Demikar chashiv leMordechai batar arba'a ulvasov batar chamisha. Why? Because now they're bringing a different sentences, and those sentences are based on the book of Ezra chapter 2 and the book of Nehemiah chapter 7. Demikar aktiv asher ba'u Zerubbabel Yoshua Nehemiah Sraya Elia Mordechai Bilshan. You see on the list that Mordechai Bilshan is number 5. And then you see ולבסוף כתיב הבאים עם זרובבל ישוע נחמיה עזריה רעמיה נחמני מרדכי בלשן. So now you see Mordechai number 6. So what does that mean? So the Taz explain in Reish Nun Aleph in 251 Hilchot Tzedakah that if you have pikuach nefesh, saving life versus reading the Megillah, for sure you have to run and save life. That's not the question. You have to save life, not if anything else, for sure you have to save life first. But here he speaks about different concept. The concept is the greatness of, if someone have a choice. For example, if you have a choice between doing something that in general may save life of people or study Torah. So study Torah is the greatest zchut, is the greatest merit. Doesn't mean that if you have a saving life situation, you should not jump to save life. But the idea is, Amar Rav, ויתם הרב שמואל בר מרתא, גדול תלמוד תורה יותר מבניין בית המקדש, שכל זמן שברוך בן אריה קיים לו הניחו עזרא ועלה. This is again a concept that people misconstrue. Ezra went to Israel 3 times. But Ezra, if you look at the story, he was the student of Jeremiah, and then it was a student of Baruch ben Neriah, who was the great prophet and scholar, and Ezra was his student. So Ezra came to Eretz Israel at the 7th year, they said. Why? Because Baruch ben Neriah was his rabbi, and he was his teacher, and he was in Babylon. So that was more important for Ezra than the building of Beit HaMikdash, because the building of Beit HaMikdash happened anyway, in that sense. So the whole idea is, and I'm not mentioning any names, but some of you may know, it was one time a fellow that was a yeshiva boy, study many hours a day, like let's say 18 hours a day, excluding eating and sleeping and praying. He studied all day. Then he reached a point that he got married, and they make a big celebration. It was doing the Sheva Brachot the week after the wedding. So his father-in-law was the Dayan, is a judge in rabbinic court, and the fellow yeshiva boy said, "We remember you, let's call him for the sake of name, Avi, that you will stay yeshiva boy forever." So, and he studied the same way as he studied 18 hours every day. So his father-in-law stood up and said, "Well, one day he needs to make a living, he needs to do this, and we bless him that he will be a great rabbi." So the year passed, and now he's married man, so he cannot study 18 hours. Nakiya lebeito, he needs to involve with his family, so he's now studying 16 hours. And then they said, they convinced him that there's a kollel, is a group of people that study, they need a head, so no choice, need to make a living, etc. So now people come with the problems, so now he studied 12 hours. And then surely afterward they need him for community. The man is a scholar. Okay, so now he's a rabbi of community, now he studies 6 hours. So the point is, the original blessing was that his friends said that we wish you to be the yeshiva boy that we remember now that study 18 hours a day. So again, it's all in a measurement of proportion what we're talking about. Someone can have the merit of the Torah, and it's more than anything else. It's all in the measurement, for sure, as we said before. When it's come to saving life is before. But in that sense, the merit of Torah supersedes a lot of other occupations and daily mundane activities. Number one is the Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 690. The name of the 10 sons of Haman and the word 10 must be said in one breath. That's basically the way we explain. However, if the reader pause, he still b'diavad fulfill his obligation. The Rema, based on the Maharil and others, says that it's customary to read in one breath from the word 500 until the including of the word 10. Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 691 Vav de one must extend, describe the letter Vav in the name of Vaizata. The Rema points out that this refers to the extending the letter when writing it. He further explained that some said that this referred to extending the sound Vaizata when reading it. Shulchan Aruch Yoredea 275 Kol hashirot kulan nichtavot. One must write the song of the Bible, for example, the Song of the Sea, the Song of David, in a dispersed fashion, with the style of a whole brick and the top of a half brick.
Boyachem leshuloim malachai yeshuloim malachai